Okay, so we're going to be doing this ad piece for maybe your portfolio if you're trying to get a job in an ad agency, or if you want to get into the commercial space and start doing things like this. Look at doing some particle simulations, and yeah, so we start off with from the inside of this and jump out like that. So yeah, project files are going to be on my Patreon page, Gumroad, and my YouTube membership page. All links are going to be in the description. So let's jump in and get started. Yeah, so the first thing we're going to do is the water simulation, and the way I did that is that I started with a circle like this, and then I added the domain, which is just going to be our cube, and we can go to the physics tab and turn on a fluid. This is going to be type domain, and the type is liquid. And then now I'm going to add our inflow. We're going to use geometry nodes to create our inflow because I wanted to have this rotation. I don't know if you can see it. The fluid slightly rotates around the curve, if you can see that. But yeah, so I'm going to do this here. I'm going to start with a curve object, circle that. Now we're going to turn it to a mesh, and we're going to use another curve circle as the profile, like that. Don't need that much resolution. I'm going to use a transform. Now let me reduce the radius. Now I want to scale this on the X, I think. Yeah, so that is more like a ring. Now I want it to be screwed around the length of the curve. All I need is to add set curve tilt, and that will just rotate the curve like that. But I can do this using the spline parameter, and I use the factor as the tilt, and just add a math node, set that to multiply to add more rotations like that. If you want to have it animated, because we do need it to be animated, we can use another math node with the operation of add, and that way this continuously rotates. I'm going to add a scene time just to have this animated like that, and I'm just going to multiply this by say 3, so that is animating faster. And I can expose these parameters if I want to, so I'll just expose this here, the radius as well. So this is going to be our fluid emitter. Now we can bring back the domain, select this, and give it a fluid system, type flow, and type flow. And in the setting, this should be a liquid inflow. And if we play back, you can see we are starting to have some water in here. It's flowing down because of gravity, so I just have to go to this domain, scroll down until I find fluid weights, turn that off, simulate again, and you can see everything is just emitted, and that's all. Now we want this fluid to go around the circle, so let's go back to the curve circle we created earlier. Go to the physics, give us a force field. The type should be wind. To have these particles follow the curve, we need to change the shape of the force to a curve. Now we can give this a strength of say 10, go back to frame 1, and you can see that's already working. Let's reduce down the strength. Now you can see what's happening. Another thing we could do is add some initial velocity. So yeah, something like that, but that's a bit too much. So yeah, something like that. We don't need to see this fluid colliding with the boundaries, so I can just turn off these border collisions. Now I also want to have control over the rotation of this, so I'm just going to add an empty, just yeah, like that, and just select everything, parent it to this new empty, so I can rotate it X like that. And now if I simulate, you can see we get exactly what we had in the beginning. Now we can go to the domain and turn on mesh so that we can see how the final mesh is going to look. Our resolution is really bad, so I can come back here, mesh, up the resolution to a factor of 4, and I usually like the smooth positive to be 3, and the smooth negative to be around 3 or 4 as well. And you can see with just these two settings, I can first hide this for a second. You can see our simulation, our fluid simulation is starting to get somewhere. We just need to increase the domain resolution to something like 64. We're going to get more detail, but the simulation is also going to be a bit slower, but it's not too bad. The other thing I did is I added these oranges that were in the way of the fluids. So let's do that. Yeah, so I have a few of these, bring them in. I'm going to add a plane. Again, we're going to use a curve, just like that. Bring in our instances, Look at that. I should separate, reset. And we're going to turn the curve into points, curve to points. If you look at that, you can see our points. We can control the amount and what. And now we can turn that, we can instance on those points. They're using our instances here. So if we look at that, that's what we get. I'm going to scale this down just like that. Use the pick instance to get a random instance. And just isolate this for a second. And the rotation, you can just plug in that rotation like that. I also want it to be randomized. So I'm going to get another random value, change this to vector and add that to this just to create some randomized rotation. But I want this to be animated. So I'm going to add another math node and just use a time and just connect this. So you see, we get some nice randomization. Another thing you want to do, because we want to use these as colliders, the simulation will not recognize them unless if we realize the mesh. So if I come down here, the first thing I want to do is reduce the count, place them in the path of our fluid. So let's add them to the simulation by giving them a fluid type effector, and yeah, that should be enough. So if we hit play, they should collide with the instances, but they are not. And the reason for that is because we need to go back to geometry nodes and realize these instances so that they become actual geometry that the simulation recognizes. And you can see already the simulation starts with them added into the simulation, and the fluid now is going around them like that, and they're adding some nice turbulence to the simulation. So I'm going to bake at around 100 subdivisions. And another thing I want to do is come back here and change the catcher type to all so that I can just bake this. Another thing I want to experiment with is the particle radius here. So let me just use 0.8 because I want a really thin looking fluids. Okay, some key things to note here about these forces is that if you increase the wind speed too much, like say 10, you'll notice that the particles will try to go into the center, will be pushed towards the center. So keep it to a minimum, otherwise they will all just start merging into the center. Like you see there, they'll all start rotating towards the center like that. Yeah, you can try a value of 1, and that should be enough to keep them rotating around the circle, but without collapsing into the center. Yeah, so now you can mesh. Okay, now you can see what we have baked. Let's turn off the particles for a second. You can see everything is going as planned. Now what is left is the material. So the material is going to be glass like that, so that we can see everything. And let's add some background. I'm just going to add a plane. So I'm going to just give this translucent shader, add a light behind it, so that we create this nice aerial gradient. So, and whatever color I give this, yeah, will just give us a nice material. You can also bring in a bottle. Now let's do some proper lighting. So I'm just going to add an area light first at the front here to capture some good reflections on the water. So just bring this up quite high. Yeah, I want to have some rim light, and yeah, to have this water look good, you want to have a lot of light to be reflected so that you get those really bright spots in the water. Now it also provides a nice rim light around the bottle like that. Now let's get another light front here. Just this time it shouldn't be that strong. This time let's try something like that. I'm also going to bring up the roughness. I'm also going to change the colors of this so you can see what we have. So we start inside the bottle, and of course that's a simple camera movement from the bottle. So this is my camera, and I start off inside the bottle, the camera moving up like that, and then rotating a bit, going out, focusing on the bottle cap, and then pulling out. Those are just a simple particle system. What I did for the particle system, I just added cube like this inside the mesh like that, give it a particle system, turn off the gravity. Also make sure you parent this to the bottom. Make sure that the source was volume, no normal velocity. Another thing I didn't want these particles to go out of the bottle. I gave this a collision effect. So the particles are always inside the bottle. Let's first change the render, change this to collection, and use the instance collection. And in the final thing, I didn't want these particles to stick around because they start to come out of the bottle, which would not look good in the render. So at some point, I just turn on this collider mesh, this bottle mesh. I animated the kill particles around this frame. Any particle that collides with this mesh just gets terminated, so that when we pull out, we don't see any particles intersecting with the bottle anymore. Yeah, so that was it. You can see the other thing I did was turn on motion blur. Let me show you my lighting, the kind of lighting I did here, just show you what each light is doing. So you can see how bright you need the lights to be to get those perfect reflections on the water. And then I had another light to add a rim light on this side, another light as a fill light, then the spotlight to light up the background. Yeah, so that's it. Thanks for watching. All the project files are going to be in the description. If you want more content like this, let me know in the comment, or you can watch my other tutorials on making stuff like this. Thanks for watching. Project files are in the description.